I've never been the most outdoorsy guy. And so when I've got to head outside, cut my lawn, like right now, I'm not usually excited. But today, I am excited, and let me show you why. Can't have it looking like this. It's because I've got the new Ecovacs Goat O1000 RTK. It's the longest name ever, but I'm never gonna have to mow my lawn again. Hello Automators, thanks for tuning in again. I'm excited to show you this robot lawnmower for a few reasons, but I'm gonna take you on my journey, which did have some ups and downs. Let's start with a breakdown of what this Goat is, and then I'll walk you through my experience with it. The Goat is $1,000 today. It's just over 23 inches wide. It's a robot lawnmower that can drive around your yard on its own using basically 3 components for navigation. Now, most of those components resemble what Ecovacs uses on their newer robot vacuums. The first component is the 3D time of flight LiDAR. That's used primarily for local navigation. They combine that with their AIVI 3D camera, sitting right here, which is used for people and object recognition. I just finished reviewing one of their newer robot vacuums with those 2 same components, and I was very impressed. I've had the same success here. But because this one's outdoors and it needs to be exact, it adds something called RTK, which stands for real-time kinematic positioning. If you've ever seen people out surveying, it's more or less the same thing. It's basically a system that measures the distance between the tower and the base, or in this case, the Goat. All of this combines into a mower that can recognize animals and avoid small objects in its path. It also means it can get very close to all of the edges of your yard, and it also means that it can find its base station. The charging or base station, whatever you want to call it, adds another 4 inches to the length of the device in your yard. It is quite low lying, and I thought something like that would end up being bigger and bulkier, but it's quite small. I have barely used any of the battery life on this unit, and if it ever had to, the mower would return to charge before finishing its job. So if you do have a larger yard, I think it's gonna be able to handle it. Now, the charging station includes pins that connect with the Goat to charge. That system seems like it will last a very long time. On the back of the station is a power cable, and actually a second cable that attaches to the third major component, which is that RTK receiver. After a short installation and a setup process that I'll show you today, this is essentially a robot that can go around your yard, cut your grass in the prettiest little pattern as it follows its automatically generated map. And you don't need any of the traditional wire fences to stop it from going outside the boundaries, and it'll avoid objects as it sees fit. Up top here, it has a manually adjustable blade height, adjustable mowing speeds in the app, and you can adjust what parts of your yard that you do. You can decide to do a whole area, the edges, or even manually drive this around and mow your yard if you feel like controlling it from the app. And since Ecovacs has been making robot vacuums for a long time, they know how to build an app with a map feature. You're able to do things like separate or combine areas. You can add in areas where you don't want the Goat to go. If you want, you can send out the mower manually, or everything can be scheduled. The only thing that might affect your schedule is the fact that this mower can sense when it's raining and will stop you from running the unit for up to 3 hours after that. But let me show you what you get in the box and what my first impressions were of the Goat. The first component is the antenna. or basically the communication pole. Now, this was separated in the box. I had to basically screw it on. There's one single screw in the box. I had to clip the cable, and then I had to put on a second pole right here. And finally, I had to put a little spacer essentially right there and attach it to this, and we'll have to push this into the ground. This cable eventually connects to the next component. That next component is the base station. Now, it has these little charging pads. I didn't have to do anything with that, but outside, if I want to affix this to the ground, I've got these little stakes. They're basically gonna go through here, and we'll use the little Allen key. I don't know how that'll go, but then all I had to do was attach this, a good sealed cable connection, to our power adapter. We'll want to keep that off the ground more or less so that we don't run over it, but that's it. And then here's where your cable from your communication tower will eventually come in. And thirdly, there was nothing to do with this yet. I just had to get it out of the box. But we do have some extra screws and the blades right here for the bottom of this. Now let me flip this over and show you what that looks like. So we have the larger wheels right here, and then we just have some casters, pretty simple casters right there. Then we have the spinning blade. Now what happens with these is they're gonna spin on their own, and then they're gonna do the cutting. You're just pulling out these screws and putting a new one in when these get dull. So quite a simple mechanism. Also, this looks fully replaceable. Like, it looks like I could just pop this out right now. Right here, there's a battery compartment, fully replaceable again. So while these components may not last 20 years on their own, they are replaceable, or lots of them are. So I really like seeing that. Now, that's it from kind of preparation standpoint. Now I can just go out and install this. I'm done with the basic installation, and I'm gonna walk you through what I did. Not a very difficult process. I'm actually really impressed. There's a couple things you're gonna need to think about as you go through this if you're considering getting one. You know, the first thing is it's plus 28, 29 Celsius, and I am wearing these lovely jeans, so very hot. Maybe don't do that, but I want you guys to appreciate that, because trying so you don't have to see my legs. First part is the antenna, or the RTK. Now you can see it's been staked into the ground, and you can see the cable right there. I'll show you that in a second. One of the things you want to have a look at is whether or not that is flashing. Now, they want you to keep it away from buildings because of the type of technology that they're using. You got to be a couple of meters away from something like your house, but it seems fine near that fence. There's been no complaints. Now, I use those little stakes. I push them into the ground. I used a hammer on this one. I used a little bit of a hammer on this to get it pushed down too, just in the location I wanted. But this is then tucked under my fence. So I didn't have to use a lot of those. Hey, ladybug. Anyways, goes all the way along here, and we come out over here. And you know, you want to be able to kind of weed whack and whatnot, so I've pushed it down as far as I can, and I do have multiple of these here along this path. Now my power cord is in a weatherproof box. You can see fairly good tension on that, not really high tension or anything, and just because I pushed all of these down. Now I didn't put one there because there's a big spider in there, I'm afraid. This should probably be mounted somewhere. It's got mounting spots, but I didn't. And then I've got this right here. So I'll have to do something about all those cables at some point. But I also staked down two of the spots here. You can see one of them right here. I will probably stake you know, the third one right there. I don't think you need all of them. These are plastic, and it is quite a process to sit there and drive that into the ground. Then it was a basic setup process. Very simple, did not take a long time here, and I've done an update. So we're good to go now. I can start to map as long as I'm over 50% charged, and I can see the charge right there. One thing I do like about this system is it requires a pin to get it started. So I've input a pin on the actual panel there, and now I'm the only one who knows that. So we're not going to be able to start it without the app or the pin on the device. So I just finished mapping everything here, and you know, now I can go in to the robot here, and I have a map of my home. You can see there's actually a little gap there, but this process was not without its difficulties. So the main area, this was quite easy. You know, I just followed the robot and then it went around. We ended up there, came back here, and it actually stopped right here at the AC unit. So it felt like it couldn't pass here. Now, in case you haven't noticed, I didn't have an edge trimmer for some little spot. So there's a little spot right there, and basically it tried to avoid things like that when it was doing auto mapping. The good news is you can do manual mapping, but it wasn't the easiest thing to keep a straight line. It was actually quite difficult. And you know, speaking of like the detection, very good detection, but you know, things like this. Okay, somebody had a wrapper out here and it went around that. Now that doesn't affect the map, it still went along. But I tell you what I was impressed with, as it came up to its own communication tower here, it went perfectly around that. And I did find with most edges, it was pretty good. But right here, next to our nice AC unit that keeps us so cool, well, this part became a bit of a problem. So I had to do this part of the map twice because there was some grass along the edge here. It didn't want to count that, and so it made the path really small in here. So all I would say is just make sure that all your grass is kind of cut down before you start this process. That should be normal for everyone. I just got a weed whacker today, actually. Another tricky part is this is my neighbor's grass. This is my grass. I'm gonna have to cut this out unless I talk to them because it went right over to this edge. So, you know, that's not a huge problem, but if you have edges, it does kind of stop there when it's doing its auto mapping. Now, I had to add a third area, and that's this area. And again, I have an edge with my neighbor here, and I had to manually do this one. That wasn't a tough one, but just keep in mind you're gonna have to drive it along. So not big problems, but some minor things you gotta think about. What I did like is in the end, it combined everything. So, you know, I have two zones. I have that split. It knows there's a path in the middle. And I did send it back to the station. Now, again, coming back to our AC unit here, it stopped. So I feel like this is not enough area for it to get by. And I think every time I send it out to mow the lawn, I'm gonna end up having to drive it home. I think that mapping is a tough job. Not only do you have situations like my AC unit and all that small space that goes down the side of my home, but you also have things like walkways and trees and bushes and gardens and kids' toys. So in my mind, this was a difficult thing for Ecovacs to handle. And I think they did a really good job. They gave us the opportunity to map manually when we needed to, and you might spend a little extra time out there mapping like I did, but all in all, you can get through it, and that's the most important thing for me. Now, for those of you with really large yards, it's it's gonna be able to do up to like a 1/4 acre. And I think it will probably work better if you're not in such tight spaces or you don't have lots of little tight spaces. Once in a while, you might have to decide to do something manually, like get out your weed whacker or something like that. And I think it was a pretty incredible installation process for me. That RTK signal and the little tower was easy to get working, and after I had completed the install and the mapping, it was nice to see the signal quality. Something you do have to know about that install process though is that wherever your base station is going to sit, it needs to have a good solid Wi-Fi signal. Now that shouldn't be hard for most of you, but keep it in mind. Okay, now I'm gonna share with you my experience after day 1 because this was a learning experience. I felt pretty down, but then I'll explain what has happened over time and how the experience has changed. Well, it was an interesting first day. So I sent the robot around here. I sent it to just do some edge, and you know, the biggest thing that I found was that it gets stuck in very skinny places. So this is going to be a constant struggle for me, and I'm going to have to think about how I place the unit, where I place the unit, and I think this is going to form a lot of the basis of what we talk about going forward. The navigation is great, but there's some little issues here with things like the grass. So, you know, I had some parts of my grass that I had let grow long just to see what it would do. Also because I did not have a weed whacker until today. But now I have one, and you know, the difference between how it cuts with really long grass and how it cuts without that it's immense actually. So basically it would not go past an area if there was long grass in the way, and it wouldn't go over an area with long grass in the way. It wouldn't go over it and then cut it down. It had to have it with, you know, a certain level. So you're going to want to schedule this over and over and over again to go back out every couple of days. It's not going to cost you anything except a little bit of battery power, and that will keep your whole place kind of getting cut, getting mowed. Near the edges, I did see it struggle sometimes with certain types of edges. Again, the house, things like that. But this is day 1, and these kinds of systems always improve over time. But the biggest problem that I had today was my AC unit. It's sticking out quite far. I get it. It's a difficult thing to get by, but the unit more or less will not try to get by. So we're gonna have to see how this goes in the next couple of days. So one of the things I talked about there was how it was struggling with longer grass. So yes, regular cutting is important with this, but later I found a setting that allowed me to set the unit to go over some of that longer grass, and then I had better success. And I will say that it's very nice to send your robot out to mow the lawn from inside your home. And even when it struggled to get past the AC, it just took a few moments for me to manually get it past that point. Over the following weeks, I realized a few major things that really changed this whole experience. After about a week and after running this a few times, the navigation started to really improve. I'm not having to worry about the AC unit as much. It's actually finding its way around it almost every time. It's also kind of found its groove, so to speak. So I've been really impressed. And I think it's the combination of those 3 navigation portions, right? The RTK system being enhanced with the LiDAR, and then that camera making sure that it's not running into anything. So it just seems to be improving, getting better, and I'm surprised at how accurate it is. You know, you'll see it going back and forth out here, and it almost looks like it's doing the same spot, and that's because it's so meticulous. Now that's also because the blades are so small, right? And they're spinning in a very small area, so it's running over the same area multiple times, basically. That's creating this really interesting thing in my yard. It's all the exact same length. I know it looks nice when we got those lanes going down after you mow the lawn with a big lawnmower, but you know what? There's something else about this. It doesn't look like I've mowed, but it's perfectly manicured. So I've been really impressed with that. So here is its current job, okay? It's doing the backyard. It knows it's got 747 square feet to do. We're about 25% done. We're 3% through the battery life. So actually, the battery life has been really good. I've actually been really impressed with this. I haven't seen it need to go back and recharge. And I don't think we're gonna get anywhere close on, 750 square feet back there. We might be at 80% by the time I'm done. That's kind of what I'm expecting. But the biggest thing I learned was that the camera here can be used not just for security, but for driving past issues like the AC unit if they happen. Now, the reason that the AC unit was a problem at the start is actually explained in Ecovacs specifications. They say a path that is 0.7 meters or smaller in width, that might require some intervention by you. Now, that gap on the side of my home is quite small, so, I could probably raise the AC unit up a bit, but I think that feature of being able to drive the unit remotely kind of solves it. I also learned that there are a number of good security features on this unit. The app has a simple setting for turning on alarms when certain things happen, like the unit leaves its area. And because it is so careful from a navigation standpoint, I think it's gonna last a long time. It's not running into anything, and I think as long as you're not driving it over big rocks or really sharp objects that ruin the wheels, it's just gonna keep running. The exterior here, it seems to be holding up really well outdoors. It gets dirty, but obviously I can't comment on longevity entirely because I haven't had it that long. Now, one thing that I am a little ashamed to admit is that I really enjoyed my neighbors coming to see this thing. Like a couple of times I'm out there, this is running, and I'm the cool tech guy, right?
It's a lawnmower.
Those people commented on how quiet it is, the fact that it's this little electric unit. I've heard eco-friendly. That's a popular thing these days. So yeah, I enjoyed it. Finally, I'm just glad I don't have to mow my lawn anymore. It stopped me from buying a traditional lawnmower, and it's saving me all kinds of time. There's only one real maintenance item to handle too, so I'm not gonna have to deal with anything really. It's a lot like a mid-range robot vacuum, not just in terms of pricing, but also in terms of that time savings and the way it works. So for busy people like me, or for people who are just kind of done cutting their lawns, it makes a lot of sense. And I think the cost versus the performance is really good here. You can check out all the links below if you'd like to see more about that navigation system I talked about here. I just finished a review of the Ecovacs X9 Pro Omni Robot Vacuum. You can check that review out right there. You'll see how good that navigation system really is. Otherwise, thanks for watching today, and of course, live smart.